Hello, it's Leela Harris, and I'm here with Kindi Dulai-Gill and Narava Nash. And this is our relationship series, and today's episode is about trusting people. Yeah, and this has definitely been a huge topic for me personally, even though I thought that I was a very trusting person. Maybe it was a little bit more like naiveness with people. But actually, deep down, I didn't really trust people. I was very fearful of them. I didn't trust them in a way, not because I was suspicious of them or I tended to think the best of people, but deep down, I wasn't really sharing honestly and being who I was. And in that sense, I wasn't trusting people.
Oh, I see. In actually
know who I was.
In saying what you really needed to say.
Yeah, trusting that they have the same intelligence I do to understand and these kind of things. Not that that always happens, but and so then this goes into a bigger topic of trust. But for now, I'd like to keep it within trusting people. And so because I haven't had that obvious mistrust of people where I'm suspicious of them, they're either going to rip me off or they're going to cheat on me or my partner is. I didn't have that overt expression of mistrust. And I'm just wondering if you two can speak to that experience.
For me, there's a huge sense of gullibility and naivety about how I used to be. So I always came from the place of giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. And so it meant that in most of my life, I trusted others ahead of trusting myself. And I obviously got bitten many, many times across the years, but it still didn't stop me from still trusting the outside person. And then as I started to do more of this inner work in the last 10 years, I started to notice that there was a correlation. And so the more I cleared up my own fears, the easier it became for me to trust me. And then suddenly I was less dependent on having to trust others. So I've sort of moved with a formula where there was like sort of a lack of trust for me and a lot of trust for other people. And then it's doing a role reversal. And now as I get to trust myself more, having seen so many fears, having seen so many behavioral traits, having seen so much of my own unconscious, it's now not as easy to trust other people because I know that they often are coming from that unconscious place that I once was at. And so I've moved in the other direction, and my implicit trust only seems to be in another person when I see that they're speaking from truth and I can really feel it strongly inside me. But when that's absent, there's no reason for me to even trust the other. I just need to trust me. It's going to sound weird, but that's what's happened to me in my journey.
Well, I can definitely resonate with that.
I can say the exact same thing, Kindi. Everything that you just said.
Right.
That's my perspective as well. Completely 100%. Those could have been my words. So
right.
You don't need to repeat.
You don't need to repeat them. Yeah.
No, it all comes down to that, probably blindly, or I think it's more about naivety, trusting other people, is how I spent a lot of my life. And also not aware of all the unconscious things that were happening inside me.
Yeah.
Kind of acting more from the programming and wanting to be liked and approved of, and trusting somebody else is also like you're giving them something that they're going to, people feel good when you trust in them. Right. Yeah. So that was probably, if I was to go back and really be able to see all the situations, I would bet that it was more about giving them what they needed.
Yeah.
So that they felt good, and then I would get the approval.
That's right. And that's an interesting thing about the approval part. It wasn't until very, very recently that I actually saw that when you're seeking approval from outside of you and you're wanting them to validate whatever it is that you're doing in your life, and currently with the work that I'm doing with MADA and with you guys and becoming more and more public around this, those that don't understand inner work, particularly my own sort of extended family at home, my mother in particular, my sister, the eldest one in particular, there's a lot of noise from them with their judgment and their persecution and their upset and whatever. And so what I've found interesting is that all the whilst I'm holding back and I'm wanting their validation for what I'm doing in my life, it's like saying, you out there, put a worth or a value on me. Because I'm doing X, whatever it is, and it's all great work. And so out there, whoever you are, you need to place a value on me because all of the things that I'm doing, I'm believing to be good, right? But the trouble with that is you're handing your dignity, your honor, your everything in the hands of people that are unconscious, that haven't got a clue who they are. So therefore, their opinion of you is absolutely worthless. I mean, it's like it could be thrown into the trash instantly because they're coming from such an unrooted place and a place where they've got no idea how much damage is happening through their words and their projections and their persecutions. So dumb me, like, why am I sat here waiting for their validation? So it's been a very interesting task for me to see that even this approval seeking thing is actually a measure of how little we trust ourselves. And the minute we really do get to the place of trusting the integrity and the authenticity of what we're doing, nobody's opinion actually matters at all. And your worth is now dependent on you. It's you that has a say on how valuable you are, right? And I think that's been the biggest blessing that I've had out of watching people that really I thought loved me come out with their knives and their daggers. Like, it's been a really interesting experience to unweave all of that, to see where was the weakness in me. And the weakness in me was the inability to trust everything I know and everything I've seen about the unconsciousness and not hold back and call it out when you see it. There's a little bit of fire in me right now because I've been going through some of this recently.
Nice. Yeah.
But it's really important for me to articulate this part about the approval seeking, because there's a mass weakness in it when we're thinking that we are extra special because somebody's given us a pat on the back, when really the person you've got to go to sleep with every night is you, and you know how pure your heart is, and you know where your integrity is, and you know where your authenticity is, and that's the relationship that's the most significant and most important.
Yeah, and also as I started working and feeling more self-love and self-respect, self-worth from inside, I realized that a lot of my life I was seeking love and worth and some kind of respect from people who actually don't know how to do that for themselves. They haven't loved themselves, so how can they enjoy someone loving themselves? That it's
So it's a very interesting little trap that we get into, particularly in our own like extended family situation, because when we were children, we really did need their love and we did really need their approval because we thought our survival was wrapped up in it. And so many people are still wandering around like beggars, waiting for the love to be poured into them. And parents typically are very loving and they are very generous and they do so much for us. So we're like as the one that's waiting to be filled up, and somebody else is obliged to fill you up. And this work is completely other way around. You have to learn how to fill yourself up through revealing the true nature of who we are, which is at its core extremely blessed and extremely special. So the more we expose that from inside ourselves, the more we deserve to shine brightly with what we now know about ourselves. So
I missed at least a minute there because it was frozen, but
okay.
so I'm not able to respond exactly to the last little bit, but I wanted to share something that came up before for me was the trust in self that I'm learning to have, which is always a journey. I mean, I feel that I trust myself pretty good, but there's still a lot that's unconscious in me. And sometimes the trust in me is to take me through an experience to see like, you know, something unconscious, but to trust anyways for me to make a decision or to say something out loud or to go somewhere or whatever it is, the more I trust that internal GPS, it takes me through those experiences to point at the different parts inside of me that I'm not able yet to see. So it doesn't always mean, I just wanted to add that it doesn't always mean when we trust ourselves that, you know, we're shining our light and we're right. It's not about being right. It's never about being right. Yeah.
It's about going in the direction of our greatest growth is how I see it.
Yeah. Good way to put it, Leila. Yeah, I like that. Going in the direction of our greatest growth, trusting whatever words want to come up and whatever action we need to take is taking us where we need to go, even if it's uncomfortable.
Even that statement,
it often is.
but even that statement about it trusting so that it moves in the direction of your greatest growth, that's only true if you are investing your time to grow, if that's what you're valuing. So like a lot of the people around us are not necessarily investing their time in growing. That's not where their value point is. For a lot of people, it's the preservation of their ego expectations. And that's the only agenda that they have. And for them, they might trust that they're going to say something X, Z, or Y, but that isn't necessarily about the fact that there's growth in that for them. That could be just that they're holding a very rigid space because their ego expectations are not being fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And they can stay in that for a long, long time. Because again, I've seen that around me. So there's a clear line, like in terms of like, what are we trusting? Because a lot of people often say, well, this is my truth. Well, if that truth is buried in, is like driven by all these conditionings and belief systems and religious doctrines and perspectives that are actually wrong, that's not truth.
You know, it's interesting. You reminded me of something, Kindi, that probably goes back to about 2001, for sure 2002, when I had a yoga studio in my home for the first time. And I remember leading a course. It was kind of a women's group. Mm-hmm. And I
got to women's group. That was it.
Frozen.
Yeah, I'm hoping she's going to. Oh,
there she is.
So we heard up to it was a women's group, and then you froze.
Okay. Yeah. So I remember being adamant. There was something inside of me, even though there was so much unconscious. There was an awareness inside that I told people, whatever I was leading, don't quote me on what I say my truth is, because it's going to keep changing.
Right. Yeah. So you knew that.
I don't know if that was the.
Oh, so I don't know what, did you hear any of that?
We heard up to, don't quote me because my truth is going to keep changing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there was something inside that knew that there was, I was trusting myself, but I could only trust myself to the point that I was aware of myself.
Yes.
And that I knew that was going to keep changing.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's like this journey, like what I saw about myself 10 years ago, prior to that, because I didn't know it, I couldn't deal with it. And then once I knew that was there, I could do something with it. But now 10 years later, what I'm seeing in myself is completely different. It's more about being in that healthy ego state, when 10 years ago, I was bridging a lot of the wounds that were there and seeing those aspects. And I wasn't willing to say, oh, yes, I trust myself, because there were so many unconscious undercurrents that kept showing up across the last 10 years that there was a nervousness to say, like, what would I trust? Because there's a big well of unconsciousness that needs to be dealt with. So what do I have the right to say I'm going to trust? So even with this work, there are moments when we end up undermining ourselves because we're seeing so much darkness, and we're not necessarily always rooted in the aspect that is conscious.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, and I speak to this a little bit in some of my public presentations, where I was trying to create intimacy in a relationship that I was in. This is before I started really doing the center work. And I really wanted to create that trust and that intimacy. And I was trying to be honest, trying to be more, sharing I feel. And really, I was dumping all my stuff on him. And I didn't realize it, because I was trying at that level of awareness as best as I could that I was. But there was still part of me that was dependent on him, like accepting me and being okay with that, or, working with me on this. So I wasn't taking full responsibility for my truth, or I wasn't able to. It was just more like, I feel this and this hurts me, and then I feel this, so that we could work things out. But in that person, because of where they were and lacking sensitivity, then they also reacted very strongly to that. And it was the opposite of what I wanted. Instead of getting trust, I was feeling heartbroken, and it felt like we were even getting further apart.
But that is a lot of the education, though. In formal sort of psychology, there's a lot of education around express what your need is. So to come to the party and say, from this relationship, I need this from you. And when you say this, this is how I then feel. And your conversation made me feel like X, Y, Z. And so, but that's not of use to anybody, because you're, like you just said, you're not taking responsibility for the fact, right now I feel anger, and right now I feel hatred, or right now I feel jealous. Like, you're not taking responsibility for the emotion that belongs to you. You're just dumping it on another person.
And actually, when you describe that situation, I'm like, oh my God, no, that would be so exhausting for me. I couldn't be in any part in that. That sounds awful. It sounds full of manipulation.
Yeah, I've had clients that have come from a psychological background that have got the formal training, and then they're claiming that they're expressing it from that place of view, but they're not seeing that all they're doing is being extremely needy. And that's the bottom line. When you get to a place where you're more and more in your own power, you're not needing anything from anyone.
Yeah.
Because everything that you need is available to you from inside. And if somebody wants to meet you graciously in a heart-centered way, you're very available to be there with them in a heart-centered way, but you're not clinging on saying, I have to have this, right? You're very happy to be in your own company if that is what life is deciding you need as well. Like, if you have to be in your own company, you enjoy that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then if you need to stand up for yourself, like, this isn't okay.
Yeah.
You're responsible for drawing that line. I'm drawing this line. This is the way it is.
That's
it's not necessarily like, yeah, there may be a conversation or something, but it's kind of like inside, it's like we know where the boundary is and we have to hold it.
That's right.
In a way.
When you get to that place where the boundary, when you get to the moment where the boundary has to be put in place, you know it from inside. You know, right, that's it. Boundaries being crossed, and this is totally unacceptable, which is where I'm at currently. Like, this is totally unacceptable, and that's it, right? Like, you just know. But even that moment takes time for it to arise as your capacity to sit inside you gets stronger, basically. and you become,
and know where that's coming from, that I'm coming from my heart and not from,
coming from a place of
that
integrity.
can be,
Yeah.
that does take time.
Yeah. It comes from a place of integrity that sort of says, no, I deserve better than this.
And coming from the heart doesn't necessarily mean it looks all lovey-dovey.
No,
right?
that's exactly it.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a whole new age culture that states, and the Christian culture too, like to be loving, right? To be kind.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? If you're sacrificing yourself, that the conditioning is that, you know, that's the right way to do it. But being loving doesn't always.
It's a shame she keeps freezing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but what Narava was saying is reminding me of your quote, Leela, the one that you put on Facebook a few days ago, about it's okay for you to have God.
It's
okay for man to have.
No, it's okay for God.
Yeah.
God to become man, to save man.
Yeah.
But not okay for man to become God to save himself.
That's
Vernon
right.
Howard is the author of that.
That's right. Which is basically what Narava is describing here, is like this journey is more about discovering who you are so that you can save yourself, and to stand in that rather than waiting for somebody else to come out and rescue you so that they can save you, right?
Which never really happens.
Well, it could never happen for any human being.
You could waste your whole life waiting for that. You know, or maybe when you die, you think you're going to find it, and it's sad. And then it's like, I do want to say something about fear, because I know a lot about that in my history, where remember when I said at the beginning of the call that I'm learning to trust people, because I was so afraid of people. So I went from being naive, like you two discussed about you trusting people outside of yourself, being naive, but being very fearful. What if someone gets angry? What if someone gets violent? Or what if someone just doesn't approve of me or even gives me a funny look? To trusting people in the sense of, because I know exactly what you mean, Kindi, how people are, when I feel like they're not being honest, then I trust that. But to trusting people in the sense that whatever comes into my life, that there's a feeling of trusting that.
Yes.
Not having to protect myself against all the scary people in the world. Ooh, what if they get, what if they do this, or what if they get angry, or what if, and realizing that if that happens, it's going to be okay, and it's there for me to work through some of my deeper issues. So in a way, I'm trusting people in that way, but I'm also trusting people in that they do help me to know myself and transform myself, either by encouraging me or triggering something inside of me that still is there that I wasn't aware of. So it's a bigger trusted existence, which is what I was talking about that I was going to get to. So it's kind of trusting all of it.
Yeah.
Most of all, that rooted in I'm trusting myself to navigate those things. Yeah, to coming to that place and transforming all those things along the way. Because like Kindi said, all this takes time. Yeah, but
I think that's an important point, because often we don't trust ourselves because we are scared of what the unknown is going to bring, and those circumstances that are often difficult. Like I can say hand on heart, the experiences that I've had where people disagree with what I'm doing, and where I've had lots of noise and judgment against me, it's broken my heart, literally at times. But it's those experiences that have helped me to claim more of me back. So it's like those experiences that have helped me to be empowered enough to actually get to the point of really trusting me and loving me, like ironically have arisen the more difficult something's been outside of me. And so often these people that look like they're doing bad things, I'm just putting bad things around that in speech marks, it's not officially bad because it's just all designed for our growth. But whatever is arising like that, they're actually doing you the biggest favor. Because like in my case, the more I get rejected, the more I get ostracized, the more I get shunned, the more I find the reserve from inside to be self-sufficient. And it's like the best gift could have been given to me. And the less I feel like I'm trapped in a prison. So it's beautiful, because these things that we would normally say I want to protect myself from, and don't get me wrong, I would prefer some of the heartache, prefer not to have some of the heartache and some of the pain that I've gone through, because it has literally been like my heart's been torn in two. But because those experiences came, and that's what existence chose for me to have to handle, the other side has been incredible, like so life liberating. That is often your enemies you end up thanking the most.
Yeah, and sometimes people kind of kill us with with softness and kindness. And so sometimes those people that are brutal, it's like, well, at least it's more on the surface and we feel it. Because sometimes we can be asleep at the wheel with all the niceness and it's cozy. And when people are kind to us, sometimes if, like I know in my experience, I saw where my life was full of not getting the love, not getting the support, a lot of negativity, a lot of judgment, harshness, all these things. And I'm grateful now, because if they would have been really loving and gave me what I want, I might not even be who I am today. I wouldn't have felt the pain and had to search for, because it was so agonizing to not get loved. And it's like, and I went on this search to like, what can I do for myself? So
I wonder whether that agony is the same for everybody. That sense of I'm not being loved, like, because that agony is intense.
I think it's hard to be without love.
It is hard.
And so because we don't love ourselves and we're missing it, it feels excruciating to lose or not have love outside of us.
Yeah.
Which is still small compared to the love for ourselves, but it feels better than not having it. The pain, as far as that goes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, that aspect as to how much of us is driven by that desire to be loved.
Yeah.
To be accepted, to be acknowledged, to belong, to, like, there's such a big pull. And I guess really that pull is that ultimately we're looking to love ourselves and to accept ourselves and to feel like we belong inside our own skin very, very happily, right? I know that you had a question, didn't you, from somebody that was actually about friendships and sort of trust?
Yeah, like, I'll read the whole question, or the topic, actually. And it has kind of two parts. You'll hear it. But I would like to hear what you all have to say about friendship, because that's a challenging area for me. I worry that I'm too focused on suffering and don't have enough happiness to share with friends. So I stay separate. I worry that I will use them too much for support and that I will feel obligated to do things I don't want to. And then the second part is, they say, I've been reading Adyashanti, who says, entertain the idea that maybe a big part of the reason that you experience that flatness and disconnection is because somewhere along the line you turned away from your sense of wholeness, goodness, and innocence.
Big nod to Adyashanti's comment there. You might have to do that in bits for me, like, so that I can hear, like, because a big question. So like maybe like the first portion of it, and then we can perhaps make a comment, unless Narava heard the whole thing and is ready to say something already.
Well, I hesitate to say, I seem to have a really poor internet connection. So you guys are frozen most of the time for me. I'm missing half the conversation. But I have a feeling that came up from the last thing that just read, Leela, and what it reminded me of is how empty it feels to be in like fake friendship, and it doesn't feel that emptiness of not choosing to go inside myself and trust myself and connect with myself. It's so not worth it to me to waste my time in relationship where those you know, those fake needs are being met. Like, you know, you're giving me what I want, I'm giving you what you want. It just feels yucky now. I have no interest in that. So being in friendship with you guys and other people in my life that are so amazing and so honest and so real, that's like, to me, that's the only way to be. So to have friends that I'm, the girl said, whoever wrote the question was a female. Is that right, Leela? I don't want to assume that, but that was sort of my sense of what you said. If you're in friendship with somebody, just being authentic is the only way to be, as far as I'm concerned. Being concerned about being too depressed or being whatever is not really the point. That's my response.
Yeah. So like,
I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like fear of not meeting expectations, like, you know, and not able to really be authentic in that, okay, I'm sad and I'm going to feel it, and I'm not going to be happy just for people because I know I need to feel what I'm feeling, or I'm angry and I'm not going to stuff it to be felt, but to work with the fears that are making her feel like I'm responsible for what they feel about how I feel, that kind of thing. That, yeah.
Because the way that I heard that, it was almost like there was an attachment to the idea that if I go into a group of friendships, then those friendships have to remain. And therefore, because they have to remain, then I have to behave a certain way to keep them there, or I'm going to drive them away. So it felt like it had that sense of it's a permanent thing, and I have so much obligation to this permanent thing. That's how I sort of heard the question.
Yeah, because she said she worries that she'll depend on them for too much for support, but she will also feel obligated to do things she doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So then,
as opposed to a friendship where you're just relating to another human being, and that sense of whether that human being is the same face across time or whether it's a differing face is neither here nor there. It's like, is she being friendly to herself by allowing her honest, real her to be in interaction with another face, whoever that face might be?
Mm-hmm. And that does relate a lot to trust, doesn't it? It's like, hey, I'm feeling sad right now.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of connection. Yeah.
And feeling okay about the fact that you can express it without the sense that I'm going to get judged for it.
Yeah.
Or that if somebody has heard me, then I now owe them something because they sat and listened to me. Now I have to reciprocate and give them something back. Like, all that weight is just huge when it's like moral codes of conduct, and you're carrying a slate, like, you did this and I've got to do this, and on this slate I've got this and then I've got to do that. Like, that's just nonsense. It's not real life.
Yeah. And so much of the world and the teachings that parents are giving kids, and then in school, it's about, well, when someone does this, then this is how you respond, and this is what you give them back. Like, it's all about this, you know, this moral code, which is exhausting to try and live by, because you're not following your own energy. I personally can't do that at all anymore. It's too tiring, way too tiring, and it's a waste of time.
And it's like a bargain.
If we want to know ourselves, it's just a game.
Yeah,
it keeps us from knowing ourselves.
Totally, it's like a bargain that says, in return for Z, I want Y. Well, there's nothing real. There's no real love in that at all, is there?
But I also want to say, if I'm feeling really happy and like lots of joy and like dancing around, and there's someone else close to me or a friend that's in my, you know, near me that is not feeling that way, and I'm feeling bad for myself for that or needing them, that's on me. Like, when someone feels happiness, that's their own happiness. And someone else could not be feeling that way, and that's their right. That's they're feeling something different. That's different than them trying to shut my joy down. They're just feeling what they're feeling. Yeah. And I also want to say, I don't know if you guys have seen this, like you go on social media or something, there's this thing about if you're a good friend, you'll be there for me always. Those kind of like tenets of friendship, which I think are pretty, like, no thanks. Like, I don't feel like living up to these ideals of the true friend. If you were a true friend, like, I don't think it's helpful at all. And it feels really heavy and codependent and kind of like maybe aggressive too.
But I had that sense, like, I know I had to go through these layers where I felt like a friend had a certain role to play. So somewhere I had got this idea that a friend behaves like dit, right? And I had to unweave all of that to the point where I had to take my judgment out of it and my expectation out of it and the sense of obligation that I had placed on the role of a friend. And as I took all of that out for them, I then could take it all out for me as well, that I'm now no longer obligated or in fear of being judged or whatever. So it was like a benefit both ways. But I went through many layers of that unconsciousness where I felt like a friend should behave a certain way. And it was part of my wound as well, I think in the Chiron or whatever it is, around friendships. And it was really just learning that the more authentic I became and the more real I became, that's the only journey that there is to be had. And nobody owes you anything, and you don't owe anybody anything either.
I was going to say what feels most important to me now is anybody that I am relating with, probably because this is what I so just want for myself, is I want everyone that I am can feel more free because of my friendship, as opposed to feeling obligated. And because it feels so yucky to have expectations placed on me. I don't want that. I don't want to have those expectations. So I'm finding that the more freedom that I'm giving people and continuing to look at if there is an expectation that has arisen and take responsibility for that feels really good. It's like an important way to move forward.
Yeah, because my brain works in formulae. That's definitely the same formula for me, is that the more I trust myself, the more I give others freedom. The more I trust myself, the more I trust existence. And therefore I see that there is no reason for my control to be there. And my freedom, my ability to set people free or be free myself increases. So it's the same curve. As I trust myself, the freedom increases.
Yeah.
And that's the most, I think almost it's like the most important quality in our human interactions. When our freedom is being squashed, like I will fight for my freedom at any expense. Like that's the most overriding thing that's important to me.
Me too.
Yeah, we should end it pretty soon because we're going a little long.
Okay.
But any final word? I want to thank the person who sent me the topic. Thank you. Any last words on, we talked, it was about trust, but we also talked a bit about friendship. So, yeah.
I think just to encapsulate it, for me, it's about trusting life in total, that everything that is unfolding, reason for it, even if I can't, to continue to look inside my response. Where's my energy at? How do I want to be in this situation instead of trying to control it and a certain way with all my interactions.
I guess my comment would be to piggyback off of that because I'm so logical and so mind-based, the stronger the hold the mind has, the less it's capable to trust. That's another formula. So the journey has been to step away from the mind and its dictate and its judgments and its ideas And the more I surrender into what is actually flowing, the capacity to trust has increased. But it's been the biggest battle for me. My ability to trust life has been the biggest and most difficult lesson to learn. And it has been like that because my head has been so strong. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about trusting life, I just want to get that impression across that it isn't as easy as it just falls out of the sky and then you go, oh yes, I'm doing this, and you run with it. It hasn't been that easy. It's been an incremental process. And the more I see reasons to be able to trust, and the more I see my head relinquishing its control, the more I trust. But it's been an incremental increase. It's like a little snowball that's coming down that mountain, and progressively it's getting bigger and stronger, but it's taken time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. Another great, wonderful conversation. Very proud.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.